Hi, and welcome to what I guess is going to be the official first episode of John's Non Sequitur. I put out the feeler last night, and I got positive responses, which was awesome. It made me so happy that I actually got some responses on some of this stuff. So the way I plan on doing this is, if you guys send me ideas of what it is you want to talk about, I'll read what you have to say, and then I'll write down some responses, and then I'll read off it and do a very unprofessional job of keeping my eyes forward. So, my first email came from Daniel, who is just always on top of things. He says, "Hey John, saw your video last night on YouTube, thought I'd say something. You're absolutely right about movies versus TV shows. One of the first things people seem to ask me is, what kinds of TV shows do you watch? And I don't really watch any TV nowadays. Time is a major reason, and aside from Stargate SG-1 and X-Files, I don't watch any TV. I just can't handle 12 seasons of 23 mediocre episodes to be caught up on the latest TV fad when there are so many other life-fulfilling things to do other than sitting in front of a screen. Movies are something else. They can be trash, true, but they are also capable of being much more than TV shows. I make an excuse for the X-Files, though. There are so many great episodes, but there are also a lot of terrible episodes. I love them all. All 208 episodes and 2 movies. Even the shitty ones, when I rewatch them, remind me of my childhood, and I have an overall great memory tied to that TV show." Okay, X-Files, I didn't watch a lot of it, but maybe I should have, because I kind of like, the whole conspiracy alien thing. I'm weird like that. 208 episodes, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that's a lot to take in. But I guess if you take like a personal interest in it. And not only that, but with the X-Files, there's a difference between like the X-Files and something like The Walking Dead. In the X-Files, the two main characters, Mulder and Scully, are constantly looking at a new case. A new case, a new case, a new case. Something like The Walking Dead. Every day is something along the same lines as what it's always been. They're always trying to get to one place. Their objective is to, from what I've been told, to get to Washington, D.C. Is that the objective? You have to let me know. I don't actually watch it, so I don't know. But shows like that, or comedies, or stuff where... The example that I can give is How I Met Your Mother. The name of the show was How I Met Your Mother. The kids were asking the guy, "Hey, how'd you meet Mom?" "Well, let me tell you, kids. Here's how I had met Mom. This other guy dated somebody for a while, and then my other friend dated somebody, and then another couple people dated, and then we did some stuff unrelated to your mom, and oh no, I lost track, and we're 7, 8 seasons deep, and oh my gosh, we need to answer this question. We haven't even touched the question yet. Well, we better answer it now, so let's just force an ending." That's the thing. I don't even know what the ending of that show is. I watched like 3 seasons of it, and I'm like, is the mom here? Are they gonna... Why is it called this? Are they gonna bother with it? And another show that I was like sort of interested in for a while was The Office. I loved The Office, but I preface that by saying I love The Office because I was really enjoying the Jim and Pam dynamic. And once they, got together and got married, and the show kept going, I was like, what am I supposed to be interested in something else now? And I know from what I've heard they kept playing on the Jim and Pam thing, but now they're married, but I don't know. The journey getting there was a lot more fun than then watching them continue onward. It just wasn't very fun. With the X-Files, you can see a couple episodes here and there, and yeah, there is a bigger story arc, I know there is, and the movies cover it, and everything covers it, but you don't need it. You can watch individual episodes. Like my favorite episode of X-Files, Daniel, is the one where Mulder and another guy, something happens where they like switch identities, but they look like each other, and it's like a 2-parter. That's one of my favorite ones, like the mistaken identity one. I don't really know any titles or anything. I agree with liking the... I've never watched Stargate. Sorry! No, I tried getting into the Firefly thing. Couldn't do it. But shows I can't have time for are stuff like Breaking Bad, Mad Men, any of that, really. Even Westworld that just came out. I actually saw the movie. And you know what? The movie wrapped it up pretty tidily in an hour and a half. So, I don't see the need to watch 10, 12, 14, 20 hours of Westworld when I could just watch an hour and a half of it. Yeah, it's dated. Yeah, it's old. But it's the same story, so there's no point. That's the good thing about movies. They wrap things up pretty fast. Okay, there's more to your email, so I'm going to read it right now. So here go my eyes wandering. Here are some other non sequiturs of my own, and I'm going to full stream of consciousness here. I've been rereading It by Stephen King. You know how I feel about that. Well, actually, hang on. Okay, maybe you don't. It is so good and scarier than the movie. Okay, now we're on board. Yeah, we agree on that. Have you read it? I highly recommend it. Also, the audiobook version is amazing. What are your opinions on audiobooks? Well, I have read It. It, the book, Stephen King's book, is fantastic. And It, the movie, well, you know how I feel about It, the movie. It's not good. It's overrated. It's not frightening. Okay. When you take a book and you turn it into a movie, especially something like It has a lot of abstract ideas that are hard to take from a page and put into a film. And they do a piss poor job of doing that. But with the book, the abstract ideas that Stephen King puts out are so strange that it would be hard to visualize them. And that's why sometimes books are better. Because what you can imagine in your head is often better than what you can visualize or even put forth visually. Even with the technology we have, it just doesn't look like what you could imagine in your head. The exception being Jaws. Jaws is a terrible book. If you put Jaws the book on screen, nobody would want to watch it. It's terrible. But, it gave Steven Spielberg groundwork to build on, and eventually he came up with something better. Okay, I have notes on audiobooks. Because the first question that came to my mind when you said, what do you think of audiobooks is, can you absorb them better or more accurately than you can reading a book? Okay, so Waterloo, Ontario, the university there, had a study that had 235 students read 3 passages. One they read out loud, and one they listened to. And they tested to see how much the mind wandered. And they found out that the mind wandered 50% more of the time when people were listening than when they were reading it out loud or silently. So, but you know what? I think it kind of depends. In my opinion, because here's the ones that I've listened to. I've listened to the entire Dark Tower thing, which there's no way I would have ever read it. It's just too long. But, and another thing is I work, so when I'm at work, I listen to podcasts, I listen to music, and this is the first time I'd ever tried listening to a book. And there's no way I could have read that book. I didn't have time. But at work, I could read it while I was working. And you know what? I retained a lot of the knowledge from it. I don't retain everything. I've never been able to retain everything, but we're going to get to that in a second. I retained a lot of it, and I enjoyed it. And I don't think that had I had a chance to read it instead of listen to it, I don't think I would have ever got into the Dark Tower. So I'm grateful for audiobooks, just purely as a time thing. They do take a lot longer to listen to than they do to read. That's true. I mean, it depends on how fast you read. But for me, like that audiobook of all the Dark Tower books took a couple months, I think, to listen to. Whereas I think if I would have read 8 books, it would have taken me a month. So it just depends, I guess. Some other ones I listened to, this is a problem that a small problem I might have with audiobooks, is that like the chapter books are split. So I tried listening to the American Psycho book, but I kept having it on shuffle, and the way that I downloaded it was it got into chapters that weren't organized, so I would only listen to bits and pieces of the book out of order. And the same thing happened when I tried to listen to Ender's Game. I have no idea if Ender's Game is good or not. Bits and pieces of it that I was listening to, I was doing landscaping with another guy that I used to work for, and I would listen to it, and it would just come on between songs, like chapters would come on between songs. So I didn't really know the entire story. I just knew bits and pieces, out of place, all over the place. So, I've listened to a lot of Stephen King. I love listening to Stephen King. I think it's easier to listen to it than it is to read it, a lot of his older work. So, and his Richard Bachman books, I listened to all of them, and I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't remember the titles. So, I mean, I guess I didn't retain knowledge that way. Okay. There's a University of Virginia psychologist professor who was once stated saying, his name's Dan Willingham, the way this is usually interpreted is that once you are good at decoding letters into sound, which most of us are by the time we're in the 5th or 6th grade, the comprehension is the same whether it's spoken or written. Yeah, I think so. Maybe you wonder a little bit because when you're reading, it's a full-on visualize the words, interpret them in your mind, and then visualize what it is you're reading. But I wonder if reading and having to read the words and then interpret them interferes with the ability to imagine what it is you're reading, to make an image of it in your head, as opposed to just listening to it. Because I'm telling you, when I listened to The Dark Tower, I had an image in my head of what everything was like, what everything would be like. Whereas when I read a book, sometimes it's just kind of words. I think it depends on the brain. I think it depends on the person. Also, I think a lot of times people might blame the audiobook for not being able to remember things rather than their own brains, and maybe they just have poor memory. Me, I have terrible memory. I'm not going to blame how much of it I absorbed based on how I absorbed it. It's more how I absorb it. I was never good at reading comprehension when I was in school. Mostly because the story sucked. Okay, and finally you say, what else? Confession time. Horror movies scare me. I know that sounds tautological, big word, but it's true. I jump way too hard at jump scares. I melt into the couch and shriek loudly when a cat appears, but I love watching them. I love reading horror more. Something about just taking the words at my own pace, speeding up the action increases, getting into what the character thinks before, bam, they're attacked. Well, I have some horror books, and there was one that really frightened me, and that was Clive Barker's Mr. Be Gone, because there was a lot of it that sounded like the character was talking directly to you, and it was a pretty frightening experience, but it was a lot of fun. Clive Barker is probably my favorite horror author, but other ones that I like are Franz Kafka, he's older, and of course, what the hell is that guy's name who writes really ridiculous things? H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft. His stories are kind of vague, though. They're kind of, I'm going to say lazy, because sometimes he'll be like, it was so terrible, I couldn't even describe it. Great. That could be literally anything. So if you have a good imagination, I suppose H.P. Lovecraft will be a good read, but if not, I don't know. Stephen King I don't read that much of. Like I said, I just listen to him, so. Horror movies don't scare me, by the way. Very few do. The ones that did were like Paranormal Activity, because I could relate it to personal experiences. And outside of that, I hate jump scares, by the way. I know we've been over this on the show. I hate them. Not because they scare me, because it's the equivalent of like enjoying something and somebody coming up behind you and popping a balloon behind your head. It's annoying. Yeah, it makes you jump, and it makes your blood run and everything like that, and you're like real tense and like, ugh. But you're not actually afraid for what's happening in the movie. And that takes away from the movie. That's not good directing. It's not good writing. It's just, I can pop a balloon behind your head. That's all it is to me. So, Daniel, feel free to write in and continue the conversation. And anybody else who wants to also, anything, like I said, anything you want to talk about at all. It doesn't have to be stuff that I brought up. It could be anything that you want to talk about. I'll do my best to look some stuff up on it, and we'll talk about it, and you talk back and forth. Daniel, if you write in, we'll just continue the conversation that way. Anybody else? I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's do this. All right, see you next episode.